Bosh, we're back. Another episode, Squeezing It podcast. Today I'm with James Peters. What are we saying? We was trying to figure out what was the best title for you, mate. You tell us.
I think my mindset coach, transformational coach. I mean, even on some places like X, I'm branded as a CEO therapist. So I kind of have these different titles to try to kind of put myself into a bit of a niche in a crowded market. But I think ultimately, around that sort of
mindset coach, wizard, whatever we want to call you. But thanks a lot for doing this, mate. I really appreciate it. So we got in touch online, obviously, through friend of the show, guest of the show, and your pal Kev Orkin. So shout out Kev. Thanks a lot, mate. But yeah, mate, we're up in Leeds today. I've been all over the north. I've never been really north before, but the last few days I've been Manchester, Bury, Bradford, Leeds, Crewe, the whole deal. So
nice, being on a bit of trek.
Like an adopted northerner at this point. Get the accent soon. But yeah, as I say, thanks for doing this, mate. Tell us where you're from originally.
So I'm originally from the south. So from Buckinghamshire, really. Lived in London a lot. Very fortunate. I lived in the US for 6 years, on and off.
Nice. Whereabouts?
So I went to university in Florida, University of South Florida. Then I worked in San Diego for like 2 or 3 years. I've worked in Atlanta. I've done some time in New Jersey. So I've been very fortunate. Nice. Early part of life to live over there a little bit. Lived in Belgium for a couple of years. So yeah, I kind of really moved around. Was originally in Kent for about 4 or 5 years up until last year. Sold my property, and then I was thinking what we're going to do, and I actually have a gran who's in Manchester, or North Manchester. She was 98, now 99. But all my family are in the south. So to help out, because she lives on her own, I came up here to basically support her. Nice. But she's going to be moving to a home now closer to my mum. So I'll probably move from this area, soon. But yeah. It's a bit of a varied
99,
story.
So you've got the good genes, right? So you'll be hanging around for a while. If that's anything
to
go by. But how old are you now, mate? What sort of time is you
46.
46, which makes you, that makes you would have been born 1978?
7.
Close enough, right?
Yeah.
We'll cut that bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so tell us how you sort of got involved in what you do, mate, with the mindset coaching. How does that go?
Yeah, completely I wouldn't say completely random, but it wasn't something on the radar. I say early part of life, very sort of cool upbringing to a certain extent. Lived around, went on nice holidays. Kind of had a very what I would classify as middle class type upbringing, private schools, that type of stuff.
Nice.
And then was in an executive sort of headhunter. That was really my career for 20 odd years. Then everything changed 2017. So my dad passed away of cancer in 2017. But then 6 months, I lost a son. He was 4. And I wasn't with his mum at the time. But then following on from that, I was then accused of a crime I hadn't done. Mm-hmm. But then that kind of put me into a situation through a criminal investigation with the police, which did go to trial in 2018. I was acquitted ahead of a jury on a 2-week trial, but it was a serious allegation. It was 20, 30 year sentence. And that changed my life because of the fact that I had never been in any difficult situations in life, and suddenly 3 things came bang, bang, bang like that, and I had no tool set to cope with that type of stuff. So instantly it was, straight into depression to a certain extent, high anxiety, suicide, all thoughts and all that type of stuff, and it was really. That was the catalyst of what's finishing 2018 to realise that I experienced a life which I'd never thought I'd experience or even know I had any experience of. But when you do experience that, when you're in that kind of system, you see it a little bit more now especially through social media and how things are, especially now in modern day, you're seeing people accused of stuff and how that spreads quite rapidly. Obviously, very much to a lesser extent because I'm not in a public figure. But similar stuff, which is happening, kind of sort of happened to me. Stuff comes out of nowhere, and you're if you have no, I guess financial backing as well. You have big problems, even if you haven't done anything. So it kind of was a real eye opener, a real sort of change of mindset. And through then, I just suddenly realised that after I got through that episode, which is, it's still there today. Like, it never goes away, but you just deal with it in different ways. But I was able to start kind of more of a inner journey, which I'd never looked at. Everything for me was more outward. It was very much a materialistic type life. Everything's out there to help me feel good inside. I never realised actually everything's in here. And then I started my, I guess, personal development journey, spiritual journey, and that's been a consistent sort of progress over the last sort of, since 2017, 2018, so we're getting like 6-7 years now. But 2020 was sort of the change to a certain extent. Obviously, we hit COVID, things started to change. I had a personal coach at that time. I'd been through therapy, I'd been through counselling, I'd done all these different things, and things had changed. I was in a definitely different mindset, but I didn't really experience any sort of real growth. And one of my coaches at the time was kind of like, God, your story is actually pretty powerful. You should. Why not? Why aren't you a coach? Why don't you help people? And I never really thought about it because it was never really something I ever really thought of. It wasn't something a personal choice to do. But I ended up doing like a Jay Shetty certification program of coaching, which took a year to qualify, and it was pretty intensive. So I graduated that in 2021, in about June time. And then I just started putting my story out there. Literally just started doing different things, putting my story out there, trying to help people. And it's just been a real learning curve, like any business when you start off, especially you're not really used to it. You kind of think you build it and they will come, and obviously it doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work like that. Yeah.
And you sometimes think that your story's powerful, but then things actually, at the end, you get to the realization that actually no one cares about your story. To be honest, it's like, how can you help them? Which makes total sense. But I think going through the shifting mindset around that was difficult because I thought I was my story, and I had to really sort of detach myself from that. And actually, my story is actually not important. It's like how I can help. The tool set which I've built up over the last sort of 5 or 6, 7 years or so, how can that help someone else? So like I took some time out last year and wrote a book and all that sort of stuff, put stuff like that
Plug
out.
the book, mate.
It's Unleashing Your Mind's Potential, triumphing over loss to trauma, or trauma into loss. Trying loss over into trauma, into triumph. So it's on Amazon, you can do an audio book, all that type of stuff.
So we'll put the links below, guys, in the description anyway.
Awesome, thank you very much. So yeah, it's just been a real learning curve from there, really. But there is an internal appetite, I think, to help other people, because when I was in my situation, I was on my own, really. I hadn't reached out, I think and especially obviously sort of my age, but even now, really, growing up when I did sort of predominantly sort of 80s, 90s, like it was, you didn't really show your feelings and emotions. It was kind of kept within, and even with my sort of family unit, it was kind of like that, even though my dad was very good, always expressing, always hugging, all that type of stuff. So he wasn't completely, I wasn't completely in a detached, unloving environment. But I think I hadn't grown up in an environment where we were, expressing or sharing feelings. So when I was in my situation, I was on my own, really. We'd just obviously lost a father, we just obviously lost a grandson. My mum was dealing with her own stuff from that. My sister had a young family, so I was really on my own. And it was navigating that, and it's brutal ultimately, because I resisted for so long to reach out to someone, because again I thought, like anything, if I reach out to someone and this gets caught into a police investigation, then I'd get pinned, like, oh, this person's got mental health issues, or this would go against me and in trial, all that type of stuff. So I was really in a very victim type mindset, but inspiring, out of control. Like, I just didn't want to speak to anyone, because anyone I speak to, it just felt like anything could happen, and so I was wanting to keep everything within. And it was only really so that was probably July of 2017, and it only really got to sort of again January of 2018, and I sat down with my QC, who's going to take my case and go and be at trial, and she just tore into me. She said, "You can't show up like this. Like, you'll be found guilty, no problem." Because I was just so anxious. I was like a rabbit in the headlights. There was nothing there. There was nothing to me, really. And then it was at that moment I was like, I need to really sort myself out here. that's when I started seeing basically a therapist. But she was specialist in Buddhism, so I really got that kind of meditative type of approach. And the thing with meditation, I saw an instant change within like 1 to 2 weeks. She saw me 1 week, and she saw me a couple of weeks later, and she's like, "Wow, you're a different person." Just because I was able to really start to calm everything down inside. Like it was turmoil, but it was just calming everything down. The thoughts were calmer. I was able to express myself better. And so I kind of realised that there's a lot of these tools out here, stuff like breath work, stuff like meditation, stuff like really able to really calm and lower your brain waves out of what mine were obviously very high beta type where you're kind of always in fight or flight mode. Yeah. You're always in a constant, flux, and the things you can't think rationally like that. You're just reacting to stuff. You need to get your head and get your brainwaves into alpha and all this stuff. And I started learning all these different techniques about how I could really sort of calm myself internally. And it was really then kind of taking all these tools and processes and sort of starting to help people who may be in similar, and ultimately I do naturally attract people who are in similar situations. I'm best about to start with a coaching program with someone next week, and been through a very similar situation, accused of a crime I hadn't committed, all this type of stuff. And so I do naturally, someone else in the US I've worked with for 6 to 8 months, the federal the IRS came after this particular person. He was a 7-8 figure business owner. But when these things happen, you're not prepared for it, and your life just changes. Yeah. Even when you're not guilty of stuff. So I do naturally attract that type of person. But I've been in there, so it's where I'm probably best served, because I've been in that situation. I've sat in a police cell and I've been there, and life changes very quickly when you're in that situation. Yeah.
Well, firstly, sorry to hear the loss of your son, man. That was, obviously it's about as bad as things get in life, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I never try to, because everyone's different, and I think we all have our own challenges. But yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, ultimately
you're in a cell, like you say. You haven't done it. You're grieving the loss of your son. So yeah, I can't imagine, man. It's terrible. But you've gone from that, and you've obviously not got over it by any means. I don't think you ever get over something like that, like you touched on, but you've turned that into somewhat of a positive as it could be, right? And now you're helping other people. So take us through that step, mate. Like, obviously, I come here today, I've met you for the first time, we spoke briefly, but you've got a good energy about you. I come in here certainly not like a dragging your knuckles, sad person by any stretch of the imagination. So, like, take us through a little bit of the process, if you can, of like coming out of it. You said instantly you got some results, like with the Buddhist type mindset and whatever.
Yes.
How does that go? Is that, you said it's an instant sort of change, but what is it? I don't want to say back to normal, because as we said, I don't think you'd ever get back to normal, but there's a new normal, right? So how was the process of that, mate? And how did you get back to sort of living again and being happy?
Yeah, so ultimately I went to being obviously like anything, just a bit of a recluse. So I was very much home based and just dealing with that situation on my own, really. But I was still working as well. So because I was a co-business owner, so I had commitments to clients who we were doing. So I was going into work, going into London, doing my work, but it was just, and which actually helped because I had to keep my mind off it. But it was torture, because sometimes I get a phone call from my sister to say, right, because obviously when you've ever been in a police investigation, like everything's one way for a long period of time.
Right, okay. So what do you mean by that?
Well, when they're doing an investigation on you, like everything, like you don't have a chance to, you obviously, have an interview in the police and stuff like that, and obviously then you're released on bail or whatever, pending investigation, whatever, or sometimes you're kept on remand. But everything is coming one way. Until you're really charged or you're not charged, like everything's coming that way. They're just bringing more and more evidence. We got this. Obviously, they take all your phones, take all your electoral equipment. They're getting more and more information from the accuser, blah, 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 blah. So everything's coming that way. You haven't got anything to say.
And does it feel a little bit sort of like guilty until proven innocent?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, if you're in that situation, people say it all the time now, but it is so true. You're not, you're guilty, but then you have to prove your innocence. 100%.
Even if you haven't done it, it's mad, and it's a mad system because
it's mad. It is mad because of the fact that you are treated like absolute dirt, and it's hard to get your head around that. And you have to go, and so it's a long old process. Like even when you are charged and you have to go to court, you first have to go to the magistrate's court, and instantly they go, this is a Crown Court case, and then you end up going to court like so many times.
And how does that work financially? Like obviously it's costing you to defend yourself, right? But then after you're found innocent, what happens then? Is that just
Nothing.
like, oh, okay, cool, there you go? Yeah. That's a crazy situation, isn't it? So you've spent X amount of money defending yourself, and now it's just you just got to swallow it, man.
Yeah, no, yeah, and that's why I feel sorry, because if you are on legal aid, you're in big trouble, and that's why. And initially, when I started I started before I was even a coach. I started when I got out of my situation. I started helping people who were accused of crimes and just helped them because they were all on legal aid. And they wanted to know. So obviously by the time I'd been through my process, I knew a lot of information and stuff, how things go. And people were getting in contact with me, like sending their information and just trying to help them because of the fact that when you're on legal aid, I mean, there's minimal help. And so you can if you can't defend yourself properly legally, you'll be found guilty even if you're not. And that's why there's so many people in prison who shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Literally ruined your whole life, even if you haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or you can destroy you financially.
Well, it's funny you said. I had someone on the podcast recently. Shout out Big Tony. He's martial artist, and he spoke about it on the podcast that he went to prison when he was 17 for something he didn't do. He ended up getting 2-year sentence, blah blah blah, one of them. But it turned out like he would have got a much longer sentence had he fought for his innocence. So at the end of the day, his, whoever it would have been, advice was just say you're innocent. And it was a crime that he was like, I don't want to be obviously associated with any crime, but this one in particular. And he was like, whoa. But he had to swallow it, say, yeah, I did it, and it got him a shorter sentence, which is, crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is crazy. So I do feel a lot of compassion for people in that situation because, there's a few people I helped who and I don't know, I never knew, obviously, if they were guilty or not. That's not for me to judge. But they were like sending me their information, sending me their the information we were coming through and how can I help them and stuff like that. So I was doing that initially for a while, but yeah, it's really from being in that whole process for such a long period of time. When I did reach out, obviously, and got someone to help who did specialise in Buddhism, it was just able to speak to someone who was neutral. Like there was no attachment because she didn't know me, she didn't know anything, she didn't know so there was, because sometimes when you deal with this is what I say to people who I help, when you have family members who want to help, there's always a slant. Okay. There's always, because obviously they really want to help you, and so it's nothing against anything like or any advice or anything like that, but there's obviously always a biasness because obviously there's the connection there. So you are best speaking to someone or being around someone who actually has no connection to you at all, because they can give you a very balanced view. So I listened to this lady and she just listened. I was just speaking. I was just able to speak to her. There was obviously no judgment from her, and just go through different things. And like she got me to like stuff like write letters to my dad, write letters to my son, all this type of like just stuff to process information. But then she brought up meditation, and obviously there's loads of apps now, but obviously at that time it was Calm or Headspace. I went with Calm, and literally I was just doing like 2 minutes of meditation a day, just listening to it, just listening to
2 minutes. That's it.
Yeah, 2 minutes in the morning, just listening, and maybe doing something at night time as well. But it just got me into a state where I was obviously, I didn't know at the time. Obviously, I know more now. Like anything, you know more stuff now. But just calming the brain waves, just breathing. Obviously, I now understand how obviously breath work is paramount, really, to regulate your nervous system. I didn't know any of this, back then. I just didn't. We're not taught to breathe. We kind of.
And it's almost, even still, it's a bit woo-woo, isn't it? Like you tell someone you go meditate, you're doing some breath work and visualization, people kind of, oh, mate, you know what I mean? So I think that's a bit hard to not hard to get into, but you have to sort of let go of that shit first, don't you?
You do, yeah. No, 100%, you think. And I think that's the thing, because I was forced into this situation without sort of a choice, then I had to do stuff which I hadn't been ever used to doing before, and not being around anyone who was doing it either. So, but I just saw an instant change. I felt different, but obviously when someone meets you 1 week and then meets you 2 weeks later and says, "Wow, you're totally different," you just think, "Wow, this is obviously making a difference here." That just started that journey and that process really. It was all gearing me up to get me ready for trial, because even though we had so many times to throw it out, the allegations were so strong. There was only one person allegations, but there was multiple within that. But because they were so strong, like it was always going to go to trial, I think. Public interest and all that type of stuff. So it was giving me tool sets to cope with that, because it's when you go to trial, that's a whole brutal experience as well, because you're sat. Obviously, you have the courtroom, you have the judge, you have the jury, and then obviously you have the benches. But you're sat in a room with obviously perspex, flanked by 2 police officers.
Right.
So you can see everything, and they can see you, but you're behind.
So you're almost like a criminal before you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You're looked at like
100%. Yeah. So you're in there, but obviously, and the jury his side, but they're obviously you forget because they're paying attention to everything. Every single detail, what's being said, every single thing. And obviously, again, it's when you go to trial, like the first week, is, depending on how long mine was 2 weeks, but the first week is all focused on the prosecution. So you're just bombarded with stuff, and then the second week it's your turn to go. And it's really the first time you can put your stuff across, and stuff starts opening up in that particular time cell. But I was lucky to have the finances to invest, because we were able to spend time and really dig into stuff, and opened up the case, but only happened at trial. But yeah, you're in that situation. It's weird because you're flanked, and it's just, and you've got nothing. And but it was gearing me up to that, and I always knew. Ultimately, at that, and I was actually acquitted within like a couple of minutes. Like the jury went out, 2 minutes later they came back in.
Oh, right, okay.
So it was kind of like that. So it was very quick. But I just remember, I remember it vividly now to this day. It never goes away. It's got a bit burned into your head. But just obviously getting released, and everyone was, even the jury were crying and stuff like that, because it was just. I remember thinking, I'll remember this day, because it's the change of life, really.
And how were you feeling when it was going on? Was you fairly confident you was going to get off, or was there a doubt in your mind?
I mean, my team said that there's no way, but there was no evidence. But it didn't matter. Like people go to prison without any evidence.
And it was, you said you're looking at 20, 30 years. So this is like,
exactly.
As a grown man, you're coming out as an old man, aren't you?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So like this is a whole kind of panic stations, I would imagine, anyway. But you said you was fairly confident you was coming out. You are, because but I think it was only because I had a really great team. Right. It's like anything. I had a really good team. Like the solicitors who I had, the people I worked with all throughout that time, they were. One of them was very close to my sister and my sister's family, so they had at least a knowledge of my family unit, and they were just very supportive all the way through. And I was able to have the funds, luckily have the funds to be able to go and get like a QC. And if you hadn't had the funds, do you think it could have been a problem?
Probably, possibly, because of the fact, even though there was no evidence, it was there were certain things where they spent enough time and they found nuggets of gold within certain things, which didn't make sense. And I remember at one point in the trial, in the second week, when the defence came, I had these 2 police officers stand by me, and there's a piece of evidence which they were hinging on, which actually wasn't true. Okay. And actually, the evidence which they thought I'd binned it. It was at home. It was at my house. Wow. And so we produced it. Said, no, this is what you're talking about. Here it is. And they're like, and these police officers turned to me and went, "You're not guilty, are you?" I don't know. And so they took like a week and a half of that. But it didn't hinge on only that, but that blew it open
big
a
piece,
lot. Yeah.
Well, that's quite a good sign, isn't it, when a police officer going, "You're not guilty."
And after that, then I was on my own for the rest of it, because they just thought, well, this is kind of a joke. But anyway, it was what it was. But that whole process of getting myself in a different mindset put me in a mindset to cope with that situation there and then, because I knew at that moment all eyes were on me. All eyes were on me, and I had to be in a right, you have to, not to say, but you have to you have to have your emotions intact. If something comes and you're kind of deadpan faced and not really bothered, or trying to have that stiff, then the jury think, there's something not right with this guy. Whereas you want the full array of emotions coming out and stuff like that. So you had to tap into that. Whereas I was dead inside at that time. Before leading up to that, I'd numbed everything. And so that was the issue. Like I had no real feeling, no real emotions.
Was there an element along the way where you just like, I don't care anyway, whatever?
I think, there was probably part of that for sure. And I think that's when I think they said, no, you need to buck up here type stuff. Yeah. They said a stronger language. And then it was kind of like jolted me out of this malaise of just thinking, because I thought, you kind of thought, it was just, I was just all like, I didn't feel like I was a dead man walking, but I just felt like everything was coming one way and I had nothing. But I didn't, because hadn't been in that process. That is the process. Everything comes one way before you can eventually bat it back. Yeah. But you're really not in there. You don't really understand it. So, going through those mindset and those tool sets, it really helped me get through that. But after then, I was like, I can do anything now. And so then I spent the next 2 or 3 years, well, maybe sort of more 2020 onwards, at least over the course of the last 2 to 3 years on, but like running ultramarathons, doing all like crazy stuff, had a boxing fight last year in Manchester and all that. Just put myself in very difficult that's what I know Kev, because I did stand-up comedy, went through his course and did stand-up.
Really? That's interesting, because I'll talk to you about that, because boxing was my background. Obviously, this is predominantly a martial arts podcast.
I did a boxing.
And it's my
collar boxing last year.
Nice, because like I've done that, and stand-up comedy still seems more frightening than a boxing match. So maybe you can tell me. But take us through sort of. Oh, before that, how long was this process, mate? From the initial, obviously losing your son, whenever your first arrest was, whatever was going on.
It was July 2017, and then my court case ended up being April 2018.
So it's a long old slog, isn't it? I'm going through some shit in that time.
Yeah, exactly. It takes a long time for it to get to get to where it was. But you've got to understand, like, you go to court so many times on that place.
So your life's on hold, isn't it? The whole thing's like...
100%, yeah, exactly. You're kind of in this hold and this pattern, and you don't really know what's going to happen and all this type of stuff. And, it's a weird situation. So had that 2018, then suddenly I was doing my work, and then eventually got to sort of, back into 2018, I just was like, man, I used to do something else, I've had such a change of life that it was really hard, I found it hard to comprehend. So I ended up within the year quitting the work I was doing, took some time out, and I started doing loads of different stuff. I started doing affiliate marketing, I did traveling, went to places like Canada, went to Niagara Falls, went to Bali, did all these type of things. But I didn't really know what I really wanted to do. And then it was really when I got my first proper coach, who I knew, and I was like anyone from a coaching perspective, I think you always look at their particular backgrounds. This person was a heroin addict, was a drug addict, all this type was an alcoholic, been through a lot of difficult things. When you look at someone like that, even though I hadn't been through that particular situation, like you kind of like, oh, that person's been through some adversity, they can help. So I started working with him, and he was like, oh no, you've got a strong story, and he gave me like the confidence to actually say, put your story out there, maybe you should be a coach, you can help people. And that happened sort of early 2020, and that's really when I started to my coaching course and then fully from that moment is when I started taking on what you classify as like extreme sports. I started doing ultra runs, doing ultramarathons. I picked up like David Goggins' book, and this was like mesmerised by this guy's mindset, and just started doing stuff. And then that's kind of carried on really. Sort of trekked Kilimanjaro a couple of times, and I got to the summit in one time, like 21.5 hours type stuff. Just wanted to put myself in difficult situations. And obviously did stand-up comedy and stuff like that. And so last year I did my my first sort of inaugural boxing.
It was really recent.
Yeah,
nice. What organisation was it, mate?
Is
it Ultimate White Collar by any chance?
It's White Collar Boxing,
Was it UWC, the promotion?
It was...
By any chance? Because I know they're around. A friend of mine, shout out David Funder, I trained him for one.
No, it wasn't that. I can't remember what the name's called now. Probably got it on my phone.
How'd you get on?
Yeah. I actually lost, which is a bit frustrating. Three round fight. And I was finding it difficult, like the training. Like the boot camp was August, like at least a year ago, all the way into the fight in October. And I was good. I felt I was athletically strong, like I'm fit. But getting in that mindset of like getting hit, like the first couple of weeks of sparring, I mean, everyone was a bit bigger than myself because also they try to pair you up with people within the group.
Yeah.
And everyone was quite a bit bigger, but you got whacked a couple of times, and I was like, wow, okay, this is different. This is when you get hit, like it's a completely different scenario. Yeah. Everything sort of takes over.
Don't hit back, right?
Yeah, everything just took over and stuff like that. And I went into my fight, and actually brought someone else in who wasn't in the groups, but it wasn't massively unknown. Like we had a couple of spars, and it was an even type. But he was a bit taller than me, probably younger. And the first, like anything, because obviously there's the ring, there's a crowd, there's a whole event. And the first round, I just went for it, and I just blew myself. Blew everything off.
Yeah,
so
3 minutes is a long time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Was it 3 minutes or 2 minute rounds?
Yeah, I think it was 3 minutes. Yeah,
it's a long time.
Yeah, and it blew this like it wasn't. I didn't plan for it, but like it was when you're in there and you start hitting and you start landing, and you just think, I'm just going to keep going, and eventually at the end of the round, I was like, I'm just gone, I'm blown. Yeah. And the second round, he was just, I didn't go down or anything, the ref had to stop it because he was just literally flying and I was just had nothing.
But you got an end drive, man. Listen, credit belongs to the man in the arena at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I was always like, I'm going to do it again, and I decided it's just never really come around again. But it was good. It was a good experience to do, but yeah, brutal experience as
Maybe
well.
we'll have to get you on the jiu-jitsu mat, man. Yeah. That's another nice little outlet for people. I don't know if you're aware of jiu-jitsu. Do you know what Brazilian jiu-jitsu is?
I know what it is. I've not done it. I know what it is.
Yeah, well, maybe we get you on a mat, man, and we get you training for a competition there or something like that. But so if we go back, so like when you first come out of this and you sort of started training, you mentioned like ultramarathons and stuff. Without getting too specific, I know of someone else who had a very similar situation in all ways as what you just described as what went on with you, and he got heavily into ultramarathon too. Is there something to that? Is it sort of a therapy in itself?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, for me, I was always I liked running, but obviously like 10Ks, 15K. I've done a few marathons and stuff like that. But it was really when I read the Goggins book and I realised I was leaving so much on the table here, and I was like, oh my goodness, okay. So I started doing ultras. It was the mindset, because everything is mindset, really. You know, obviously you need to be physically capable, but everything was, you know, everything is upstairs, really, and how you can control this in certain situations. And with ultras, because you're kind of running, you're trekking, you're walking, but it's all here, really. You know, I literally just done a ultra in Scotland. I did 100 miles, and it was a 215 one. But
sorry, you just said you only did 100 miles. Yeah. Get in the comments on that one, kids. Jesus Christ,
yeah,
only.
It was a race across Scotland, 215 miles, coast to coast, in 100 hours or less.
Right.
But yeah, I literally there was so much going on. Like my foot management wasn't very good, and my sleep management was terrible. So by 35 hours, I got into a checkpoint, and I was struggling. But thought, well, let's have a quick nap. The first time I'd have a nap in 35 hours, pretty much. But the paramedic looked at my foot, because obviously it was so asphalt boggy, all that type of stuff. I just tore the whole foot open, and he was just like, "No, you're going to lose the foot if you carry on. You can't go on."
And what sort of shoes are you wearing? Sorry to cut you off, mate, but because like there's a big.
I was wearing Hokas.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, but the problem I wore was a mistake, is I wore waterproof. Well, I wore waterproof socks thinking they would help, and actually they don't. I think they were more of a detriment. What I realised when I started speaking to people is that literally they were changing their socks every time they went from wet to dry, and if there was a consistent amount of dry, then they would change them, stop, clean their feet, all this stuff. And I wasn't doing any of that, and stuff like that. So it was your foot management had to be better, your sleep management had to be better. And people were just like getting in their little jiffy bag and just falling asleep on the heather, and I didn't do that. I kind of wanted to get to a kind of a checkpoint and then sleep there.
Right, okay.
And he couldn't do that, you know. So there was just little things and stuff around which you kind of learn on the way. But it was the first time I'd done that type of race. I'd done a lot of ultras, but multi-stage over like 4 or 5 days, 250 kilometres, but like 50k a day or 40k, and then stop, camp, next day type stuff. But yeah, it was all. I've run. It was all kind of mindset, you know, just building that. Because that's where it really is. I mean, I saw people even on this last ultra who just slogged it out, literally slogged out. You know, obviously their management of themselves, you know, was way better than myself, but it just slogged it out really, because it was all up here.
Yeah, but you're pushing your body like an absolute lunatic, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I just realised that it gave me some of these different tool sets. And so I was like, you know, doing different stuff. Like I was getting up at like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, going for runs, all this type of stuff, 40-mile runs, all this. I was just like building that mindset, just thinking, just keep building, building it again, when you kind of listening to Goggins so much, you kind of consume that content so much, you just like, you're getting up and you just going for it, whatever.
Well, it's funny. The reason I had a little giggle on my face then, you said you was getting up at like 3 in the morning and going on a 40-mile run. So when I was sort of like late teens with the boxing, didn't really know what you're doing training runs, right? You're just doing all kinds of training hard. I used to get up at 5 and run 4 miles. I had a 4-mile route, and that was hard enough, let alone getting up at 3 and running 40 miles. And what is that part of the Goggins thing, is it?
Yeah, well, exactly. This was back in this was like the COVID times to a certain extent. So it was that kind of like that 2021. I mean, I definitely hit an athletic peak at, I would say, around 222, which is what, 43? Okay. I probably hit up athletic
that was your best.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I was like in top shape. I just, after I'd done what ultras, ended up going to the US and doing a Navy SEALs Hell Week.
Okay,
Hell Week in 50
I know that from Goggins because there's a famous UFC fighter, Tony Ferguson. I don't know if you're aware of him.
Yeah.
He did a Hell Week with Goggins in lead up to a fight.
Oh, wow.
And the knock on it, I think, after he's on a losing streak anyway, and I think this was like to reinvent himself. In his peak, he was one of the greats, but he's kind of like one of them stories that's fought too long. But he did a Hell Week, but people were saying it was too close to the fight because he was flat. I think it was like 3 weeks. I might be wrong. Give me a comment below. It was like 3 weeks before his fight. So it probably wrecked his body. Do you know what I mean? But take us through that, mate. What's the
that was good. That was good. Yeah, I mean, it was this company called Seal Fits, run by Mark Devine. It's San Diego, obviously, stuff like that. But yeah, he takes people through a civilian Hell Week. So it's 50 hours, and it's a beast thing. It's very yin and yang, on and off, and you do stuff like surf torture. So you do pretty much the standard, to a lesser degree of what they put through. But people who do go that, there's some people who want to be a SEAL, go to that before they go actually to a proper Hell Week.
Like
and actually
prep.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like a kindergarten type effort before you go to the big one. But it's still they're run by SEALs and cadres, so it puts you in a real
Can
place.
you just do this, can you? Anyone can sort of sign up?
Anyone can sign up for it, but yeah, I mean, obviously they once you sign up for it, then usually around like that March, April time, maybe they kind of start getting you in training, so you're ready for it. Because I mean, obviously you have to be physically strong.
Yeah, right.
And some people didn't attend any of the training courses. Obviously, everything's online on Zoom and stuff like that. Because obviously, everything's done out in the US, so you have to dial in to do it. And some people didn't do it, and they kind of didn't get through because obviously they just weren't at the probably the right level.
They're not doing these courses in prep.
I just think they probably just thought, this is going to be no problem. And there was a lot of younger, maybe late teens, going into 20s and stuff like that.
Oh, right, okay.
And so, and maybe they just thought they could turn up and do it and stuff. But it was brutal. But like the best experience I probably have ever had. Because,
really?
Yeah, because you got to certain levels. Like one of the best things I ever had. Like probably about 48 hours. So we'd done the whole chunk now. And then, and what they did, we had like sandbags in our rucksacks. We took out a sandbag, put it at 25k, something like that. We put it in our hands. They marched us to the top of a hill, and then one of the cadres gave out this massive speech, ultimately about letting go, and how this sandbag meant what we're holding on. And then he would just come say this speech, and then he just came with obviously a flick knife and just cut, and so the sand just came. And it was that element of just letting everything go. But you had to get to that point through being up for over 48 hours, through being beasted for that period of time. I had it was the best therapy ever. I had like tears just streaming. Like it was the best thing I've ever done. Yeah. But you had to get to that particular point through the 48 hours, and then obviously then once you kind of did that, it was kind of like the finishing finale to a certain extent before the end. But yeah, it was the best experience. And then I came back from that and then did a PB at London Marathon, because obviously at that time London Marathon was October, and this is finished at the beginning of October. So yeah, I'd say athletic peak at that particular time.
What was your PB,
flying,
if you don't mind?
Like 3:24.
Oh, proper time, yeah, fast. Like that's under 4 hours is the goal, isn't it, for Joe Blow? So to get down to 3:24. That's moving.
No, I felt really good. And so then I went that December. I went to Killy and did that. Over that Christmas time and stuff like that. So I was really in a really good place then, doing those type of challenges. I've noticed a knock-on effect now. I think that's probably just food to, general fatigue, wear and tear, I don't know.
Right. Are you still involved in that? Are you still looking to do challenges and things like that?
I still want to do more challenges, yeah, and that's why I kind of did this one. But this one I signed up a while ago, but I couldn't get on 2023 when I was probably in a better shape, and then obviously had to default to 24. But this last year has been a bit flux, because I've come up here, dealing with kind of an elderly grandmother and stuff like that, and my whole life's been somewhat a little bit more on hold. she's going to be moving south in the next month or so, and I'll probably move in the next couple of months. And then I'll try to sort myself out again. It's ultimately the plan is still to do these mindset-based challenges and actually invest in a lot more.
Because you seem like a candidate for one of these guys that's going to go on to break loads of Guinness World Records. Do you know what I mean? I feel like
you see that. Obviously, you see what the hardest skis does. Obviously, that's a completely different extreme. And then obviously you see what this Spencer Matthews has done in the body one, which I've done that. I've done that Jordan ultramarathon and stuff like that. So yeah, you definitely want to put yourself in those type of situations. That's always been the goal, is to, obviously have stuff out where you've got a book out, you've got a name out there of who you are, what you're doing, you do your coaching, but then you're also doing your own stuff, be it running, be it, all these different challenges, whatever they may be, because I think that's important. Like if you are in someone who brands himself like as a mindset coach, and you need to be putting yourself in difficult situations. I feel anyway, personally, you need to be living authentically. Yeah. You don't want to be sat at home doing nothing.
You can't be the fat guy telling people to go and run marathons, can you? You're sitting there.
Exactly. So you got to be authentic about who you are and stuff like that. And that's why I've always wanted to push myself. And the stand-up comedy stuff with Kev was amazing, and I do miss it. So I definitely want to try to
tell us about that. Tell us about the stand-up comedy. What was that like?
Yeah, well, again, obviously met Kev, and obviously, as you know, he's such a great guy and
big energy, Kev, and he fills the room.
Yeah, exactly. So he had a course, and I did it, and he was one who personally trained me. Sometimes I think, but he was one. So we would get on Zoom and we'd go through my content. He would obviously give me stuff, and we'd trying to carve out kind of a niche of where I was going to be, what I was going to sort of talk about, more story-led than sort of joke-led. And then you put me in front of an audience, which was a Clubhouse audience, so kind of somewhat people who knew me from that app, who had been in different rooms. But it was good.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it.
How long did you do?
How long?
How long was you on stage? You can give it
not long. I mean, it wasn't massive, 5 minutes.
That's long enough, though.
It wasn't massively long. Maybe even slightly less than that. But it went down well, and I loved it. And then I went on and did another thing through obviously his corporation, Junglers, probably February, March of the following year. And that was the last time I've done anything. So it's a shame because I did want it to keep it going, but I do like to get back into it because I loved it. It is a different element, but it was just it's just the nervousness of getting out there and telling.
Right, I bet.
When I wasn't really telling gags because I wasn't a jokey type of person. It was more story led. So we kind of tried to base it on, dating, and what terrible scenarios you've been on and all this stuff. So it was just funny jokes and funny stories.
Funny stories, rather than boom, boom.
Yeah.
Because when I was with Kev, I don't know if it was on a podcast or whether
it was
one-liners. He said to me about doing it. I think you're crazy, man. I'm a fucking funny guy. That's not for me. But he was like, blah blah, and I was like, whoa, that feels like the scariest thing in the world to me. Even more than getting in there and fighting somebody.
It can be because obviously sometimes people just don't laugh. You just you just kind of get on. You just kind of push it off and you move on. You have to have that mindset where it's obviously you don't take it personally. If something's not funny, it's not funny. I mean,
it's got to be hard, right? Because we all know it's like sitting in the car with your mates and you tell a joke and everyone goes, "Shut up, mate." Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Let alone on stage.
It's always the delivery though. Yeah. That's the thing. It's there's certain things if it's delivered properly, it's hilarious. If it's delivered not great,
it's an art form.
It could be really funny, and it's not. So it's going through that process. But yeah, I did love that. So, but I just always loved putting myself in situations which are just generally uncomfortable, and just seeing how it goes. And obviously, you fail. Yeah, and that's fine because that's like when I did this marathon or ultra a couple of weeks back. Ultimately, it's a fail. Even though you still got 100 miles, which is still good, but there was so many lessons in that. So many lessons. I came away thinking, wow, I've got so much to learn here. Yeah. If I want to do this again.
Well, I think it's only a fail if you give up on it. You know what I mean? It's not really a fail. Do you know what I mean?
And we're not really taught that. We kind of did you not compete? Oh, you failed then. Well, yeah, that is true, but there were so many lessons in it. Yeah. So even though I didn't accomplish the goal I wanted to accomplish, I still did 100 miles off the bat, which I've never done before. Yeah. So I still did certain things which I hadn't done before, but there was just so many lessons in it. I suddenly realised, wow, I need so much more. Like a lot of people had support teams, which I knew how paramount that important that is, especially on those type of runs, because you have someone just sort of okay, right, if you thought about this, if you thought about that, maybe, and I didn't have that. And that, I think there's definitely people who completed it without support teams, but I'd say 80-90% had probably support teams.
That's got to help, isn't it?
And it does, because when it's demoralising for you when you go past and someone's just got their family there, or partner, and little massage, everything, you're kind of like, oh shit, But you have to plug on. But it's paramount to get you through. Like I was talking to one guy, and he had his parents there, and he'd check them around and everything like that. And I know you did complete it, but it was so like you just need, because when you're running, especially for that long, your mind fries. Like you're kind of in the zone, and you just forget about everything else. And you like your foot management, all these different management. You just kind of like, oh, let's leave that. I'll wait till I get to a checkpoint. Or me anyway. I'll actually get to a checkpoint, and it's completely the wrong thing to do.
Because it's accumulated then, and it's too late. It's too late. Yeah. Right, I got you. So you, like, I've seen your Instagram and stuff, and I'm looking at you now. You're obviously a fit guy. Like, what's sort of like your training? I don't want to say regime. It sounds a bit douchey, doesn't it? But what's your training like now?
It's train every day, so I never skip a day.
7 days a week.
Yeah, so it's either running, or it's I love getting on a bike. Okay. So I go. There's classes here. I go to obviously got a gym here, so I go in the gym here, and I'll do like 45 minutes on a bike, and I'll use like the Peloton app, so you can obviously tap into the classes on there, and then I'll end up doing like 50 or 100 pull-ups. Something like that.
Okay, so
do
proper
that.
training.
Yeah, so do that type of stuff. Or I'll go for a run, I don't know, 7-8 miles or something like that. And then there's a bike studio, and I go spin classes in there as well. So there's a lot of it's around, because I know how important like your legs are to be strong. So I do that. I used to have a personal trainer for a while who was awesome. She had been in SES Who Dares Wins, so came from a great CrossFit based background. And I think through that, and through her helping me over the course of 2020s all the way through to 2022, I think, a couple of years, I was in really peak state because I knew what nutrition I needed to eat, and she was obviously massively into CrossFit. So I was doing that. I was doing home. I had everything. I had basically a gym at home, pretty much to a certain extent outside. So that was key. And I had running coaches as well and stuff like that, for a certain period of time. So I don't know how important to have a coach is. Sometimes you can think, even when like now, sometimes I think, I can do it myself because I've built up all this knowledge. You still need like, and even when I was doing my boxing, I thought, I'll just do the training they're providing, which was 2 or 3 times a week. And I suddenly realised this ain't enough, so I ended up having to get a trainer, but it was all too late. But I realised like anything, you forget about it, and even I as a coach, but I sometimes forget that we all need someone. And that could be a physical coach, nutrition coach, mindset coach, but we're not massively programmed for it, and that can be sometimes the challenge when actually it's ultimately educating people around that, because I think we all need someone. Even if we think we know stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Coming from martial arts and stuff too, like I've trained with people that I've coached them and they've coached me. We sort of both coached each other on different elements, because it's just, as you say, it's nice to have someone there, isn't it? Even if you know it, to tell you what to do, to sort of outsource it so you don't have to think about it. To me, that's a mental stress off that I don't have to worry about.
100%, yeah. No, so much. It's so true and stuff like that. And sometimes you forget. I didn't say even I forget about it, even when doing what I do. But I think I've realised how important having that. Be it if you want to get into running, have a proper running coach, or if we want to get into nutrition. Obviously, some people now do it along running and nutrition, or whatever, fitness coach and nutrition. So sometimes you can build it into 2. But it's so important to have that element in your life, and I think that's why it's so important with having someone who can help on a mindset basis as well. So
I think, and you mentioned earlier about breathing methods in your mindset and stuff like that. Is like I've done stuff like Wim Hof method. I've done the online course. I don't know if it's level 1 or level 3 or whatever the initial stage is. And I like it. I do sort of my own little Wim Hof method every morning. Do the cold shower and all that kind of stuff. Is that the kind of breathing we're talking about?
Yeah, I did do Wim Hof for quite a while, and then I got out of it a little bit because when I went through the Navy SEAL stuff, they're massive on box breathing. Everything's box breathing, so I got into real box breathing.
And for anyone who doesn't know, box breathing is 4 in, hold for 4 out, hold for 4.
Yeah, it's like a box. Yeah, like, exactly. You just do that sort of stuff, and that's what it was all about. They taught that, so I became very specialised in that and used that to a certain degree. And then obviously I speak to someone now who just says you shouldn't manipulate your breath. You shouldn't, you should just let the air sort of come in through the nose, out through the nose. You know, just like, so you shouldn't restrict it or regulate it and stuff like that. But I think it's different things, different times, be it on, you know, certain situations you're in, be it, you know, obviously from a physical exercise perspective. But so conscious breathing, I think, is really powerful. Like, are you consciously aware of your breathing? Or most of us, obviously, you know, we're not. You know, we're so it's just being able to sit in the moment, wherever, even if you're speaking to someone or you're just at home, and you're just monitoring your breath. I mean, back in June, I went on and did a 10-day silent meditation retreat, which was amazing. But
yeah, you really have done some crazy stuff, man.
What can happen? But but I just realised that, you just, if you can just monitor the breath through the nose, out through the nose, you know, not regulating, not manipulating it, just letting it go naturally, in, out, in, out. I mean, that's what when you go back to, it's like, you know, ancient times, back in, say, you know, India and stuff, they didn't regulate their breath. It was just the natural
just sort of
breath.
almost like you're watching it.
Yeah, just the natural breath, and that's super powerful. I've learned, so I do more of that now. The more, and I don't do as much on the box breathing side, but you know, they're equally powerful. But then sometimes I found you know, if you do your breath, then you should always smile, because that's a real key thing to really kind of, you know, get you out. Sometimes people are breathing consciously, but they're still thinking about, you know, their ex, or they're still thinking about their credit card bill, or they're still thinking about it, and they're not really changing everything. Whereas actually, if you can just, that's one of the hacks, is if you can actually smile
while you're doing it. Literally sit there smiling like a crazy man.
And just getting yourself out of that state. That's what it is, like putting yourself into different states. Like, people always tell me, like, the best thing is always to feel good now and get better, you know, because it's so powerful, because that elevates your vibration and your energy. And that's really where, I mean, you see so many people walking around and they're, you know, like the world's fallen apart and they've got a scowl on their face and stuff like that. The problem is, when you're in that state, what happens? Well, you're just going to continue to attract the same situation. So people never get out of that particular state. Like, they live in this cycle of negativity, but you can only change your state to change that reality. And that's one of the hardest things people can do, because sometimes they go, oh, I don't want to laugh, or I don't want to smile. I say to someone who's feeling down, you know, watch something which makes you laugh, watch something, you know, stand-up comedy, or go on YouTube. There's so many stuff like that, so many resources out there. Oh, I don't feel like it. But that, you have to get out of that, because you're never going to change your state if you're not prepared to, you know, to do that. And that's so that's the thing. Like, when you can actually smile, but even if though things are going wrong, but put a smile on your face, have a laugh around stuff, your vibration changes, your energy changes, and then you start having better thoughts, because everything's linked. You know, thoughts all linked to how your, you know, biochemistry is, and so it becomes so important to change your thought patterns by having different speech patterns. And this is, you know, there's so many stuff you can go into on this and deepen into that, but that's really what it is. It's about changing your state, because if you're continually thinking the same thoughts, operating on the same behaviours, being in the same energy and vibration, you're just going to continue to stay in that.
Well, when you say it like that out loud, it's blindingly obvious, isn't it? But it's like, I think when you're in there, it's hard, isn't it? It's hard to see, because we all do that. Like, how many times have you crossed the road and gone, oh, fucking idiot, but to yourself. But I think it probably compounds over the years. So by the time you're a grown man, I'm mid-30s now, like, by the time you've been doing that for 20 years, it probably has a bit of an effect. And do you find stuff like that has a big impact on people's physical health as well?
Yeah, everything's linked, right? You know what I mean? So, I think that's one of the key, like, moving your body, getting out physically, you know, has a huge impact, because, again, it raises your energy, raises your vibration, and that's what it is. I mean, like, you can get, I mean, obviously, I've been fortunate enough to spend a lot of time in deep spiritual development type courses and hang around people who are deeply in the spiritual field, and I've been fortunate around that. But then I realised that everything's energy. Like, we're just energy beings. I mean, everything's energy. This table's energy. This is energy. But it's all vibrating at different frequencies. So everything is energy. So we're attracting obviously you go back to kind of like the law of attraction type stuff, but we're attracting what we're vibrating. So if we're kind of miserable, down, what we're just bringing more of that into our life, we're not changing anything. So you have to change your energy, change your state. And then you start attracting things, you start attracting more abundance, you start attracting different relationships, you start attracting, so you've got to change, but ultimately it's one of the most hardest things you can do, because we're mostly sleeping awake. We're mostly running on an automated pattern of behaviour about how we go about our day-to-day lives, and how can we then snap out of that, wake up, and be consciously aware about the choices we make. So I've had my phone here. I'm consciously picking it up because I need to do something. I'm not just automatically picking it up. I'm not automatically jumping for a Diet Coke. I'm not automatically having a coffee. I'm thinking, do I really need this? Is this good for me? And it's being consciously aware of those situations. I'm consciously aware, am I drinking enough water? All this type of stuff. And that's key. Like one of the things I was drinking water, but someone said to me, you should be drinking like 3 to 5 litres a day. And I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, your body's 70% water. Your brain's at 80%. If you're not fully hydrated, no way you can think properly. No way you can have the right thoughts. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But it sounds obvious. But again, how often do people drink 3 to 5 litres of water a day?
Yeah, not often. My background was personal training. I was a personal trainer for a long time, and that you tell someone they've got to drink one of them, and they look at you like you're sideways. They're like, all of it, and you're like, well, you got the whole day. You just, do you know what I mean? And then trying to build it up. But I've been through periods, especially when I've been training really hard, and you obviously with the amount of sweating you must be doing on 100-mile runs and stuff. Like I've drunk sort of 5-6 litres of water in a day, and you, not to get graphic, but you still take a piss and it's bright yellow, so you need more, right? And it's like you said, the conscious effort of having to do it. But I find when I'm in a zone with that kind of stuff, and you tell me what's your experience, is when you're kind of rolling with it and you treat it like a game, it's almost, you want to do more and more of it, right? You want to keep drinking the water, you want to like go to bed you turn into a recluse, you want to go to bed at 8 o'clock and like all that kind of stuff.
You just start feeling good. That's the thing. You start feeling good, you start feeling in a better state of mind. Because the thing, like sometimes I've tested certain things because I always like to test certain things, and I've been at a time where I've just mindlessly scrolled and stuff, and I come out of it going, God, I feel terrible.
Yeah,
I know consciously because I'm aware of it, because I know I've been in a different state. I go, wow, I feel terrible. Okay, right, I need to stop that and blah, blah, blah. But I've just tested it just to see, but it's in no time at all. Like I can go, when I went through that civilian Navy Hills, I was very restrictive on what I ate, what I did, where I slept, my stretches, all this type of over. And then I kind of like, once I finished, I kind of pushed everything to one side. But I saw within over 4 or 5 months of work, it could all unravel within a matter of days. And suddenly you're just like, wow, that's actually really powerful to understand that, because my mindlessly scrolling, feeling bad, not obviously taking some time off exercising, but wasn't doing the stretching again, all this type of stuff, and just was like, I just realised how things spiral very quickly. Your mindset is the first one which starts to go. Like you start having these different thoughts, you start, more disempowering, more feeling more negative, and you just think, but you're consciously aware of that because you've been in a better state, and you can kind of drag yourself out of it. And that's where I think, obviously, some people are, it's difficult because they're not aware of that. If they've never been in or got to a state where they've got to that state, then they think that's normal, and actually it's not. Actually, our normal state as a human being is joy, happiness, all serenity, all this, these higher elevations of states. But people will probably say, no, that's unnormal, but it's actually not. It's just the way. Ultimately, like again, we're waking up a little bit more through society. And I think now with certain platforms and stuff like that, like you're becoming aware of like mainstream media and the continual push on certain narratives which actually are disempowering towards us, and it's about waking up to that and actually being consciously aware. But obviously, when you grow up for a certain period of time, you watch the news and it be at 6 o'clock in the evening, 9 o'clock, it's BBC or Sky, blah, 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 and you kind of listen to that, but it's just massively plugging you in to a fear-based reality. But you're not really awake to that until someone wakes you up to that. Yeah. And obviously I think probably certain elements like COVID woke up people to that. But some people are still plugged in. So like you've got to be so conscious about what you consume, be it especially through social media, but just in general, like even with the people you hang around with, like what type of people are you hang around with, this kind of doom and gloom and stuff like that. That push, whatever you say, that's going to have an effect on you. Like environment always beats will. Yeah. So you might have the will to change or will to be a different person, but if your environment's not, you're going to lose every time over a certain period of time.
Well, it always amazes me how many people still sort of do take on mainstream media. It's like some people still sit there. There was a guy a few years ago. His name Nick something. Someone can help me out in it because people know he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He was on London Real. Nick something. I can't remember his name.
Feels good.
But he said he treats the paper like if he's on public transport or whatever, and he sees a paper, he treats it like a poisonous snake.
Yeah.
He avoids it and stays away from it. I thought that was cool.
So powerful.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Because you can get involved in it. And we do it with the phones, like we touched on the phone, right? How many times people pick up the phone and just scroll aimlessly and 20 minutes has passed by. But the awareness side of it, I would imagine, is...
It's the awareness really, because obviously then there's always a bigger play at things. So stuff around like mainstream media or like papers and stuff, or magazines, is what is classified like the image makers. Like what are they putting in there to put you subconsciously into your mind around something? And it could be around anything. It could be pictures of certain things. And when you're kind of consciously aware, like what are they trying me to take from this picture? And it's like there's always a higher power at play. Like for the US, for example, obviously they're going into an election, and obviously you got Trump against Kamala Harris. And if you look now through any of the media, like you got this Trump very stern, very dour face, and you got this Kamala Harris very smiley, but she's not really speaking, but always smiley, very lit up. And it's a programming. It's programmed to people subconscious to say, oh, she looks good. And in the poll she's going up.
Is she?
And she's not speaking.
Oh wow!
Because but obviously there's and stuff like that. So it's just there's stuff in play. There's image, what we call image makers. So when you do pick up a paper, and there's images in there for a reason. They're not just being put in there and stuff like that. So you have to be consciously aware of that, because subconsciously it just goes in, and you do. Like if you pick up, naturally if you see something and you see the top two headlines, what's that? It's this instant human reaction to think, oh, what's that? Let's read a bit more of that.
Before you know it, you're 6 hours deep into the mirror. Yeah,
exactly. You just have to be consciously aware of what we're programming with. Yeah. We're programming ourselves every day through what we consume.
Yeah.
Be it not only through what we eat, but obviously what we intake. Through be it whatever media we expose ourselves to, we're programming ourselves, and it's about being consciously aware to say no, that's great. What that guy said, instantly new paper straight away type stuff, great, because he obviously knows the power that if you caught it just a little bit, you're hooked. You're
sucking in, I get you. So if we like talk about a bit of what you do, like what if someone comes to you, what's sort of your dynamic that people normally come to, and what's the reasoning behind it, if you can, if we can't.
So people usually come because of my background. Some people will come to me because they've been through a similar search,
and they know your background. So
not everyone does, but obviously some do who will reach out, who will know background, and so I usually help. What I do always say to people, I try triumph over trauma. So someone who has had some sort of traumatic experience and who wants to take that, what is classified as a negative experience, but you can transform that into a positive outlook. So it's basically taking them through that process of what I usually do, like a 6 to 8 week short program with them. Then people usually last, or they don't beyond that type period of time. But it's being able to implement these tool sets, which I've talked about, stuff around breathwork, meditation, visualization. These are kind of what I classify as basic tools. But then I go through actual exercises which can transform the way they see stuff. Because everything, for me personally, is self-image. Like, how do you actually see yourself? And that's one of the challenges which most people have, especially with modern day, especially how we're programmed as well, that their self-image or self-esteem is in the toilet. So even though they kind of want a certain life or they want a certain thing, self-image is always, that's vibrating 24/7. So if you think of yourself negatively, predominantly most people do, you're never going to change your life, because that, even if you have the will to change, the vibration, your underlying vibration is I'm this, I'm that. And if you actually speak to someone, how do you foresee yourself? They'll instantly always bat it. They see themselves in the toilet, really. Self-esteem is so low, especially if you've been through a certain experience as well. Naturally, it pushes you, pushes you sort of certain that way. So, but how can we take that and we transform it into looking at it actually from that event? I can actually look at that event now, because I've done the work. Ultimately, like anything, you have to do the work. Like getting in the ring, like you have to do the work to get there. But I can look at those events now from the past and really be grateful for them.
Right.
And some people say that's impossible, but I've done the work.
Yeah.
To get myself in a situation where I've transformed that, what is a very negative scenario, or classified negative, and actually look at it and be grateful for that experience.
So you're not changing the event, obviously, but you're changing the way you view it. So you're seeing it from a completely different angle.
Yeah, exactly. It's like taking an event and flipping it and saying, well, how can you be grateful for that? And most people instantly say, I can never do that. But you have to do the work to get there. Of course, it doesn't take time. It takes that time. That's why I take people through that journey of being able to look at the event and most people will say that changed their life, and most people will say it changed their life for the worst. But how can we actually say, it's changed your life for the better? And that's really where it comes in. It's very transforming that. But I do instantly start a little bit at childhood, because a lot of our childhood programming impacts where we are today. In
terms of how you view the world, is that?
Yeah, exactly. Like your limiting beliefs, your beliefs around certain things, like with the influences you had in your informative years, and go through the science of that. I mean, obviously, when you're up until you're basically sort of 2 years old, I mean, you're a sponge. You've got no, you're not, you're basically given what you're told, really. Yeah. And there's no, obviously, rational mind behind that until you develop like prefrontal cortex and stuff like that. It's only when you really get to a little bit older, like 4 years, and then you start to, progress. So you see things in certain situations, but ultimately that has a massive impact of who you are today. And school does as well. If you ever experienced a school like bullying and all that. I mean, I spoke to someone who was in their 50s, and when I went and tried to deal with a traumatic experience, he went back to school when he was 11 and beaten up. And that has still impacted him today.
40 years on.
Yeah. Because it burned into the subconscious mind. Like, well, that's the thing. It's like once it's in there, the brain takes especially if it's a traumatic experience, the brain will take a snapshot, and through that snapshot, then it will go like, "We never want this happen again." So it'll do everything possible for you to never be in that situation again. Yeah. So it's again like why people hate public speaking, because naturally at some point in school they probably stood up and sort of laughed at them or blah blah blah, missed whatever they did. And so in that way, you go, right, we never want to experience that again. And so people will then never put themselves out in a situation where they, speaking publicly. Yeah. And it's how you can really get over that. Yeah. But understanding where it's come from, because sometimes I think that's where you need to go back, which actually understand where it comes from, and then you can change it. And then sort of think, well, I don't really know where it's come from, but I want to change it, because you never really understand where it's come from. You have to sort of go back. And so that's kind of where it starts for me. Like I take people back to that time in life, go through that, start understanding that they can have those aha light bulb moments, like, oh, now I know why I do this. Now I know why I'm like this. Now I act like this. Because ultimately we are even though we would hate to admit it, we're we are mini parents, really. We have our, be it people from be it mother's side or father's side, like you have those characteristics, they come from there. So the way you are is the way that is, and that's why you see generational patterns in families. If someone's an alcoholic, drug addict, naturally it goes through the family until someone wakes up to that and changes that pattern.
Man, I'll tell you, you'd have a field day with me if we started talking. Jesus Christ, you opened my mind a little bit on some things. But that was great, man. Before we finish up, I always have some fun with people. Like I spoke to you briefly. You said a dirty word that starts with M about the football team you support, but we get into it on camera. I always ask people about fights and things. Do you have a favourite fighter? Are you into your fight game?
I do. I think... it's, even though it sounds obvious, but it's got to be like Tyson Fury, I think.
That's a good answer.
Just his journey.
Yeah.
Like from where he was, obviously having mental health issues, to where he was, and obviously his weight, and then just back and be like, get a world title fight and stuff like that. And I'd be interested to see what he does in the second bout with Usyk. But I think Fury, but a lot of it's because his story. Yeah. Yeah, it's powerful. Someone like him. So probably him.
Yeah, I got you. How about historically, when you was growing up, was there a guy that stood out?
I always liked the Bruno Tyson fights.
Okay.
Yeah, because obviously I was 80s, sort of grew up, and I remember seeing,
late 80s.
I remember seeing those fights. So yeah, Bruno's always been there, but Tyson, I think he was just a monster, isn't he?
Yep, you touched on two there. Mike Tyson's my favourite of all time, and Bruno, I don't know him, he's obviously a lot older than me, but he actually comes from the same boxing club as me, so there's a bit of a connection there. But before we finish, the important question of the day, who's your football team, mate?
So yeah, Man United.
Guys, this was going so well, huh?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm used to be obviously massively. I mean, obviously, I've been fortunate enough to live close by now, but I used to have season tickets for a while. Did you? Okay. In especially when we had like Rooney, Ronaldo, Tevez time, like the peak time,
which is really recent.
Yeah, exactly. 2007 and 8. I lived in California. Used to come back for games sometimes.
You're a proper fan. Okay, cool.
Like, really into it then.
Why United? Is your dad a United fan?
I guess family originate from here, and obviously my grand's still here.
Right.
From here.
So that's a legit reason.
So and it's just I think it's always been. I think it's the first time I went to Old Trafford, like I don't know, early 90s. Just was like wow, yeah. I mean, there was just an aura around the whole. I mean, I know. Now it's not as much, but obviously at that time, that kind of early 90s, it was just an aura around United, I think, and I think it kind of really pulled you in. But obviously, when I kind of started following before they had their success, but yeah, it was really big. And then I think obviously over recent times, life changes and stuff like that, and I follow it, but I'm not bothered either way so much now.
I got you. Just in case we ever do this again, the correct answer is Chelsea, and you can have that one. All right. But thank you so much for doing this, mate. I really appreciate it. It was brilliant. I always finish in with the fists up like this, mate. Join me. Squeeze the neck. Boom.